Actually, maybe I can.
We're recording.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. We are recording. So, good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, July 29th. My name is Dan Bostrom. I'm the Rails Member Engagement Manager. And this is the IACRL Fall Semester Town Hall. This is going to be a fun event. I think we're going to have some time to have some great conversation. But first, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping, kind of tell you a little bit what we're doing, and then I'll turn it over to my IACRL colleagues. So here's our agenda. We're going to have the first first hour will be on physically reopening academic libraries, and we're gonna have three presentations, Sarah McCone-Chase, Kathleen Rhodes, and Marie Waltz. We actually, and I wanna note here that we did have a fourth presenter who unfortunately cannot be with us today. Carolyn Chesla unfortunately was not able to make it. We apologize. But then we're going to have about half an hour after these three presentations to have a discussion. And at that time, we will answer questions, and you can put your questions into the chat box, and we will address them. And we'll have some time to share, people, talking about what they are doing and things like that. So, and then at the 11 o'clock hour, we're going to turn it over to resuming instruction. And we have two presentations, Tish Hayes and Fee Miller. And they are going to talk about what this means for academic libraries. And then again, we're going to have some more time to talk about this topic and do some discussions, and you can ask your questions directly into the chat box. At this point, I just want to note a few things. So please mute your mic when you're not speaking. Everybody should be muted upon entry. You have the option of turning off your mic. We're asking you not to do that right now, just while people are presenting. When we get to the conversation part and you want to ask a question, you can, but we're going to try to organize this as best we can. And if your mic is on, it just introduces background noise, as we all know. So try to ask your questions in the chat box. There will be 30 minutes of presentations roughly, and then 30 minutes of conversation. We are recording today's event, so we'll be available. And that's about it. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dan Matthews, who will do the introductions for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. I just wanted to set the tone for today with a little animal introduction. Sleeping in the sun, I think, is always a good start to any meeting. My name is Dan Matthews. I am the digital services librarian at Moraine Valley Community College. I use he, him pronouns. And I just want to welcome you all to the IACRL Fall Semester Town Hall. I'm excited to see so many people are here. We have almost 100 in attendance. So that's very exciting, but I'm guessing this kind of turnout means we have a lot of questions and a fair amount of uncertainty about the upcoming semester and COVID-19. I hope the presentations and conversations today help provide some inspiration for plans that are yet to be made and some affirmation for plans that are already in the works. We wanted to provide really kind of informal opportunity for people to kind of get together, share information, bounce ideas off each other, and just kind of get ready to go into the fall. With some logistics, again, Dan said we've got two sections for today's program, the physical reopening and then resuming instruction. Each section will have 30 minutes, and then we'll have 30 minutes of presentation and 30 minutes of question and answer. With so many people to manage the question and answer, if you have a question you would like to ask of the panelists, please type the word STACK, S-T-A-C-K, into the chat, and we'll try to call on people in the order that you kind of put STACK into the chat. When you're called, unmute, show video if you want to ask your question, and our panelists will answer on the call. If you as an attendee have an answer to a question or additional info, please put it in the chat. And if you have a question for the group of attendees, not necessarily the panelists, please put that in the chat as well, and we'll keep that conversation in the chat. And then questions for the panelists we'll kind of do live on the call. And I'll go over that again as we get into the conversation piece. But without further ado, I'd like to get started with our physical reopening piece. So I'll introduce our panelists today. We have Sarah McCone-Chase. Sarah is the head of user services at Northern Illinois University. Sarah's department consists of circulation, interlibrary loan, reserves, stacks maintenance, billing, and mailroom. We also have Kitty Rhodes. Kitty is the Access Services and Scholarly Communications Librarian at Chicago State University, Currently, Kitty's primary role is to oversee the circulation, resource sharing, course reserves departments, and services. Chicago State University is currently closed with an open book drop. And also Marie Waltz, who is the head of access initiatives at the Center for Research Libraries. In her current role, she manages CRL's digital and print delivery services. Marie received her MLS from Indiana University. Sarah, if you don't mind, we'll get us started.
Okay, good morning. Thank you. As Daniel mentioned, I'm the head of user services at Northern Illinois University, and I use she, her pronouns. And this morning, I was just going to talk a little bit about balancing the health and safety concerns of staff with the workload and staff's desires for more or less workload, basically. In some senses, my library never really closed. So we were closed to patrons for the most part, but we had at least one staff member from my department coming in somewhat regularly on a schedule that we devised. It was like, I think 2 days a week in the mornings. And that gradually began to sort of increase with more and more staff coming in to do more and more things. That was okay because it was up to me basically, but we just had this workload that was increasing, and I was trying to reflect that with the scheduling. And patrons can come into the building to pick up items, and that's about it. Stacks are closed, and it's been working really well in terms of having staggered shifts, half days for staff, and then not having as much concern about interactions with patrons that could be potentially, dangerous to someone's health. But one issue that I was starting to notice is that a lot of staff was asking to come in much more than I was really willing to do at the time. That's somewhat solved now because I have what I'm calling the regular schedule, which is still staggered shifts and half days, but really it was something that I found very jarring at first, is that I felt like you're trying to schedule staff to keep them safe and healthy, and then people are asking if they can come in the building even more. And then the other thing that I noticed at the same time was that I just had some very vocal staff asking, can I come in to do this? Can I please come in to do this? But that actually wasn't all my staff. So having to realize, oh, you can't just assume that everybody wants to come in all the time. Some people actually want to come in even less if they can. And that's been something that's been important for me to not only note, but then reach out to each staff person on a somewhat regular basis and asking them, are you comfortable coming in still? How are you feeling? Is there anything that you want to talk about? And so it's been a real balance between staff desire and workload, what has to get done in the building and what can't be done from home. And it's been a scheduling nightmare. There's also, the safety measures that we have in the building. Of course, regular mask wearing in the common areas and wearing gloves when handling library materials. And I think that we've been really clear about that need all along at the university level, at the library level, and then I've said it. But then I also get reports from people who have been in the building, staff members, other librarians. Once it was a patron coming in to pick up things about those measures not being followed. And that's been a real concern for me because, no one ever wants to be, strict or angry with staff. And there's probably good reasons why somebody might not have had the mask on at that moment and probably should have, but didn't. But I've had to be firm on this. So I had to send out an email to the whole department saying that if I heard, anything else about this again, I was going to have to take measures. And like, procedures are there on purpose, and we've all been pretty clear about it. And I think that these things make the possibility of opening up more in the fall harder for me to figure out. So right now, patrons are not in the building very much at all, just to pick up materials or possibly by appointment. And as we started opening up services more, patrons are coming in more right now for good or ill. And then we're talking about opening up, of course, even more in the fall, where our stacks would still be closed, but we would maybe have patrons on our first floor and our lower level with no more than 50 on each floor, but we don't have a good way of, so far, figuring out how we would keep account of people and how long they could stay. And we're not supposed to have, last I heard, we did not have students for the fall, and you know, all this work is that much harder without students, but it's also like a weird use of student labor to be like library bouncers, you know, counting people going into each floor, are they wearing their masks, what have you, and that's going to be complicated. I think it's also going to be harder to let staff sort of spread out so that they're not as close to each other if we have patrons also in the building, and that's been a concern for me as well. And I think that it's going to be harder to meet workload demands on a half-time schedule if patrons are also in the building. But you know, I'm not ignoring the fact that like the library is for use. It's just that I feel that there might be ways that we're more able to meet our patron needs if we are not having patrons in the same physical space, but that might be an argument that we have very little control over anyway. If patrons are allowed in the building, there's all these other health and safety concerns, not just with my own staff, but is there a safe number of people that can be in a library space? We know what the guidelines say, but that doesn't make it feel any better. Do staff get counted in the ultimate number that's allowed? So if you have 50 on each floor, 100 in the building, a certain number of those are going to be staff. How are we keeping track of that? To what extent can we prioritize our own workload? And what happens if somebody, well, we know that the staff have to wear a mask. I've told them that. They know that there will be repercussions if they don't wear their mask. But what if a patron just refuses to? Who's in charge of that? And then I feel like any amount of planning that I'm doing right now is simultaneously too much, and it's just not enough. I created a LibGuide very early on for the whole department to talk about what our departmental plans were, what scheduling looked like. We just got lockers. At the beginning of the pandemic, we made that decision, and so they're parcel lockers, and I had to create a whole procedure for that and how we would put materials in there for staff, for students to pick up. And this whole LibGuide's already out of date, and it's just really hard to keep up with. And then also, I would, you know, send out announcements about the LibGuide updates, and I would tell staff, I just did this, please take a look at this. And then, you know, I would get questions about it weeks later. Are we going to do this? Yeah, that's why I put it in the guide. But while I didn't necessarily anticipate that sort of breakdown in communication, and reflecting on it, I'm not surprised, because dumping a lot of information on people during a stressful time probably isn't the most communicative that I could have been. And so I've been trying to reflect on how I'm communicating with my staff, especially right now. And I think those are really my big ideas for the moment. I'm happy to pass it on to Kitty.
Thank you, Sarah. It's funny because you're touching on a few things, and I'm laughing about that you send messages out to your people, and it's like weeks later you hear about it. It's like, yeah, that's something that we're all running into. Hi, I'm Kitty Rhodes. I'm the Access Services and Scholarly Communications Librarian at Chicago State University. As Dan said, our library is currently closed. We locked our doors on April 10th. And I am the only person from the library Access Services Department that's been going in and doing anything. We unlocked our book drop the first week of May, and we've been checking it every couple of weeks, but surprise, not a lot of action there. ILDS has started up their delivery. I know a lot of you have started receiving materials from them. I was one of the first academic libraries, because I know Brock from way back. I said, yeah, go ahead. I'll meet you up there and let's see how we can do this, and let's work out some plans for these things. Today I'm looking at reopening considerations that we want to look at for both employee and patron safety. We want to try and find balance and try and keep everybody safe and healthy, and be able to offer services as much as we can. I'm going to start a little bit backwards here and say your backup plan. You should always have that backup plan. I believe in Murphy's Law, but your backup plan is basically what we're all doing right now. You have to shut your doors. If all the things that you're doing don't work, or you find that it's just as we found, some of the public libraries are getting a little overwhelmed because people are really excited that they're open again, and they just got mobbed. They had to back off and then start restricting things again. So it has to be, your plans have to be fluid. You have to, you know, definitely keep a sense of humor, but understand that this is all new for everybody, and we have to go with the basics and keep the basics in mind, which is about safety and health. And, you know, it comes down to the simple things of wash your hands, wear your mask, clean your work areas, plexiglass shields. Definitely, if you're allowing people into the building, if you're going to be interacting with people, you definitely, if you can do that. And absolutely the 6 foot distancing. Mark off the 6 foot distancing if you need to. If you're allowing people in the area, and they're going to stay in the area, if you want to let them use study spaces, or, you know, like sit at a table, or if you're allowing people to use your computers, then I recommend, and I found talking to various other libraries, don't just move the furniture out of the way, remove the furniture, because if you try and block it off or just shove it over to a corner, believe me, people are going to go get it and move it around. You know that at normal times, especially with students, they like to rearrange things however they want, and our patrons do that. I put up there the post, the COVID-19 survey from ALA that they did in May, that they put out there to all the libraries and asked, you know, who's planning to do what? Are you planning to open? Are you planning to stay closed? You know, what are you doing? For us, for everybody, it's a giant jigsaw puzzle. We have all these pieces. And just when you think you've got everything all lined up and I've got this really great plan, I'll figure it out, somebody changes the shape of the piece and now I've got to start over again. I just had that happen this week. I have to completely rework my staffing and figure out how we're going to be doing all of these things. We are going to, I understand it's not firm, but I understand we will have students on campus. We will be mostly virtual. But like some universities, there are some things that we might need to have some students on site, and trying to accommodate that, and trying to accommodate even the people that aren't on site, but to allow them to use our materials, and try and get back into doing the reciprocal borrowing with iShare and make that available to people. So then we have to say, are we going to do curbside? Are we going to let them in the building? If we let them in the building, who's going to let them in the building? You know, how many, as you said, how many people in the building at a time? We know the guidelines, you know, square footage. We went through that a little bit early on. Right before we closed, we did like a very careful closing, where originally it was, we limited patronage to students, faculty, and staff. So then it became only certain students and faculty with appointments the last couple of weeks, and asked them, you know, to wear gloves. Some people wore masks at that time, some people didn't. Nowadays, yes, we're asking them to wear masks. My plan was to have people come in by appointment, that they have to have a mask on when they come in the building, that we would have hand sanitizer right when they come in, please use that. Gloves are, there's a ongoing discussion about the use of gloves. Basically, the one thought now is that the gloves kind of can spread things around, but I highly recommend them. I still feel when you're handling materials that the gloves are the way to go. And referring to materials, that we are all quarantining our materials, how many days to quarantine the materials. If you've been following the RAILS project, which is the, basically they put live virus on different library materials and keep testing to see how long the stuff stays there. And once they go back every couple of hours and every day or so and say, okay, it's not there, so now we can say it only lasts on there for X amount of time. There's 3 parts to it, and I will put up in a few minutes the website for that you can actually see the actual studies and how they were done. But it was encouraging because all of us kind of went with a 72-hour or 3-day quarantine for our materials, and that's held pretty true for everything. And, you know, overall, again, it just kind of gets down to keep your area safe, keep your distance, keep your masks on, whether you believe in them or not. Various studies have come out this week that even if things get through that mask, it's still going to protect you. And that's your big protection. The other is communication between your staff. Everybody get on the same page and, you know, keep your plan as simple as possible and maybe even cross-train. So there we are. I got a 1-minute note here from Dan. And so now I need to turn it on to Cheryl, I think. I'm not sure who's next. Thank you.
Hi, Kitty. It's Marie Waltz. I'm next.
I'm sorry, Marie. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's fine. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Marie Waltz. I work at the Center for Research Libraries in Chicago on the South Side. My pronouns are she, her. We closed fairly early around March 17th, and we're gradually reopening. And I'm going to share some of the planning activities that the center has been doing over the past few months. We developed a phased plan for reopening with the ultimate objective of getting our in-house services up and running. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Center for Research Libraries, we're an independent academic library that's located on the South Side with a membership made up of academic and research libraries around the United States and Canada. We offer a variety of resources, including a large special collection, both digital and in print, with many unique items for the use of scholars, students, and others. We also have programs that provide platforms for collaborative projects, licensing databases, and other programs that are needed by the academic library community. We have a small reading room, but most of our services are online. Our COVID-19 plan, which is located on our website, you can just click on the banner at the top where it says COVID-19 and it'll bring you to the 8-phase plan. Explains what will happen as we reopen the building. The plan involves 5 levels of service. Each level is 3 weeks long. We started at, we're counting backwards, so we started at the top of our levels, which is level 3.0, with no staff on site, and we are now at level 2.0. At this point, we're serving out all interlibrary loan services. And if nothing happens to cause us to quarantine or the governor or mayor doesn't decide to shut things down, we will move to level 1.5 in the next week or so. The priorities for level 1.5 is to have half of the staff in the building who need to be on site. Those who can work remotely will continue to work remotely until the state and local governments decide that remote work is no longer necessary. To write the plan, we formed a task force of CRL staff who brought different viewpoints, including building staff, human resources, and interlibrary loan staff. The plan includes likely scenarios, protocols for behavior, procedures for handling our materials, and a schedule of work. The plan follows local, that's Chicago, state and federal guidelines at all times. This means the task force has to keep up to date on the latest requirements. For example, the number of people who may congregate in a workspace at one time is currently limited to 50, but this number can change and may impact our workspace. To begin the planning, we built scenarios because they helped us to understand all the considerations for the plan. Scenarios help bring out the risks and answer questions like what hours should the building be open, what services can we offer, what staff are needed on site, how can we schedule to ensure less contact between our staff. Some of the risks we became aware of were, of course, staff might get sick, and a sick on-site staff member could spread it to others working in the building. This would require closure of the building for cleaning, possibly a 2-week quarantine. In most cases, there were 2 people who could perform most of the tasks, but it could slow down our work processes. Another risk was potential skeleton crew burnout caused by a high demand for articles, because in phase 2.5, all we did was serve articles, which was the first phase that we went to after 3.0. We knew it was possible we could be deluged with articles requests because few libraries are open to serve articles. This would lead to slower service, which we realized could be acceptable. The number of days for turnaround is longer right now. And so we learned also in the case with the backlog, because we had a lot of people return materials as soon as we opened to 2.5. And we realized it was okay to let them sit for a while, particularly because that would also entail them being quarantined. When we were thinking about staffing, we created roles rather than designating people to determine who needed to be on site. We stagger daily 4-hour schedules with each staff do their job when others are finished. For example, with interlibrary loan, we have the Iliad operator come in first from 9 to 12, then the page from 10 to 2, then the scanning operator from 1 to 5. So each staff member completes the amount of work that's possible during their shift and leaves with work undone if they have any. And this has been difficult for some of them because they're used to finishing their tasks before they go. So we have to constantly remind them that it's a-okay. We are not expecting everything to get done the way it usually would be. Our facility has been prepared in several ways. We have a sanitation station available to those arriving into work that's close to the entrance. One idea we considered was having a separate entrance and exit door, but we discarded this thought because it was confusing for staff, and it's important right now to appreciate the intensity of this situation and not overcomplicate returning to work. We have a schedule of all staff in the building, and if changes are made, our facilities department is informed. This is to help staff isolate within their work cohort. We work staggered schedules of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Tuesday, Thursday the next week. So that one group is totally isolated from the other group. And therefore, if that group gets sick, then the other group wouldn't. That was the logic behind it. So far, no one's gotten sick, though, thank God. Level 2.5 includes article delivery only. And level 2.0, which we're at now, includes all ILL services, including sending hard copy to those libraries who are open. We call the library before we send materials just to make sure they're still open. And we send everything UPS to avoid loss, and also because UPS will get them to sign, which means they actually receive the materials. Mail, we accept mail during all the hours that we're open, which are currently 9 to 5. Staff will answer the door and let the mail people in. Mail is sorted only during select hours when the staff is available, but this also allows for quarantining the mail. Returns from members are all accepted at this point. We developed a material handling document to help with this. Materials are quarantined for 72 hours, and everybody has to wear gloves when opening all the mail. All other CRL staff continue to work remotely. At level 2.5, there were no part-time staff in the building. At level 2.0, we asked some part-timers to return on a voluntary basis. We were concerned because they're less well-insured than full-time staff and often have other commitments. So we really wanted people who were willing to come in and were willing to commit to some sort of a schedule. Additional staff come in sporadically, including people from our systems department and finance, because they need to run our payroll from the office. Manager approval is required for all unscheduled remote staff to visit the building, and managers have to seek permission from our facilities staff for building entry. And this is to ensure that we don't have too many people in the building at the same time, so that we are making sure there's not a lot of exposure. So we're considering moving to a new level. That decision will be made by our executive leadership team. And moving to a new level is dependent on what's happening with the COVID-19 infection, returning guidelines from the federal government, state and local governing bodies. We're aiming for a full building reopening at the end of the summer, as this is when many of our member campuses will reopen. Should there be an outbreak, we will close the building for cleaning. Consistent adherence to all of our protocols for how to social distance is also included in our plan, and managers decide when their staff need to return to the building. And that's all I have for you. So please ask questions. There's lots of other things we thought about before we came up with our plan. And it's been a very interesting experience to have to think this way.
Awesome. Thank you all so much, Sarah, Kitty, and Marie. Thank you so much for your insights. Let's have some questions. Let's have some conversation. So again, if you have a question for the panelists, type in STACK, S-T-A-C-K, into the chat, and we'll try to call on those people in that order, and then you can unmute or and put your camera on, ask your question, and we can have a back and forth with the panelists. So I see Patty with a question. So Patty, why don't you go ahead and unmute and go for it.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I was wondering, what does the sanitation station at Center for Research Libraries that is at the staff entrance, what does that consist of?
Sure. So we have just the alcohol sanitizer, and we have several types because we made our own because we couldn't get any to start with. So at first we had that hand sanitizer, but then later we were able to acquire commercial hand sanitizer, which is actually much nicer on your hands. It's not quite so alcohol-y. And then we have gloves, and we have extra masks because sometimes people forget to bring a mask, or especially when people are first starting up, they may just not have acquired any masks yet. So those are the three main things that we have on there. We also require that people fill in a form when they start working that sort of acknowledges that, well, we give them like a little spiel about, you know, wearing a mask and then require them to sign a piece of paper saying that they heard all of what was told to them. And it's not really to cover us so much as it is just to emphasize that these are really important things for them to think about.
Thank you.
Sure.
Feel free to keep putting your questions in the chat. I have a question for the panel. How are you all thinking about being flexible? So obviously there's a lot of uncertainty going forward. Things are changing very quickly. So what are some of the things that you are taking into consideration to keep things flexible and to keep things kind of fluid as you move forward?
I've been trying to spend a lot of time thinking about like if a staff member brings a concern to me, like, you know, I would like to be able to work from home today, even though you have me on the schedule. I'm taking that into consideration because I think that it's just really important to, you know, acknowledge the staff right now because they're people and I want to respect them. So I'm trying to be really flexible when it comes to staff concerns. If they're like, I don't have enough work to come in, can I work from home today? Or, you know, I'm just not feeling it today. Please let me work from home. Or actually, sometimes I have a lot of work to do. May I please have this extra day or whatever. As long as everyone is actually following, you know, masks and gloves and other sanitary sort of concerns, then there's no reason not to be flexible there.
I was going to say, I'm going to add that, yeah, the flexibility has to be there. You have to be sensitive to your staff's requests. My staff has been working from home, so they're doing stuff at home, so I can do the things inside, like the CRL. Our ILL person has been doing document delivery, electronic document delivery the entire time. Our reference department has been virtual and continues to be. So in some respects, yeah, we continued with services. I mentioned that because of some circumstances that we're cross-training, because we came up with the idea, because there's just going to be two of us now doing services, is if one or the other of us gets sick, everything falls back on the second person. So how is that going to work? I mean, some of the work can be done from home. Some of the work needs to be done on site when you're processing your books and everything else. So I'm in the process of working out. The other person, actually, she and I both, I pretty much, you know, as her boss, I know what she's doing, but she'll be trained. She knows most of the other processes where I will cross-train her in the things she doesn't know. And then we've also had a third person who's volunteered to step forward and learn some of the things that we do in case we do need to put the call out and ask for some extra help if we need it. But it's really about, it comes in again with flexibility, being sensitive to your staff's needs. You might need to adjust the hours if you find that the staffing, you're just not able to do the staffing. So you might have to, you know, flex a little bit on that one too. So there's that. I see Deb said, Deb Walsh says her library never closed. I'm impressed. Wow. So she put it in there.
Yeah, and just in terms of flexibility, I think with every plan in this situation, you have to be ready to look and see what's happening with the state, local, and federal governments, because they are constantly revising what they think as well. And so you have to build that into your plan. You have to make sure that you're monitoring them in order to make sure you're complying with what they need. And in terms of like staffing flexibility and things like that. So I think at first we were, really thinking Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, everybody could adhere to this schedule. That was that. But it turns out that, people have doctor's appointments or they have issues at home. And so, allowing people to skip a day or something along those lines, but continuing to move forward on your work, I think is the best that you can do in some situations. And so you need to kind of accept that you're not going to be able to get it all done the way you normally can, and that's okay. I think, just reassuring people that it's okay, that they're not going to lose their job if they can't finish everything. Those sorts of things is really important, and that this is an unusual time, and you're not going to be able to use your usual judgments with things, and giving yourself and everyone else kind of a rest on that, I think, is really important.
Great, thank you all. We have another question from the chat from Mary. So Mary, if you want to go ahead and unmute, put your video on, please feel free to ask the question. And I just want to remind the attendees as well that if you have responses to the questions, please put those in the chat. All of this conversation is important. Just want to make sure that the audio airwaves are clear and simple. But please put all your comments and thoughts in the chat. The chat transcript will be sent out, so we'll have a document. So all of that information and conversation is important as well. So please, please put in the chat if you have something to offer. So Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just interested in each of your institutions, who was actually making the decisions or final decisions on when you would open or close, and was the library part of that? Was there a voice or representation in that decision making? Here at the College of DuPage, our administration on the campus is actually driving those decisions, and we are following suit. So we are not open currently, but we are moving towards some sort of limited service model where we still won't be open, but it'll be more of a grab and go kind of activity.
That's a really good question, Mary. I think in our case, it's a kind of negotiation between the library and between university administration, and I think that process has not been entirely transparent to well, it's not transparent to myself, and I don't believe it's transparent to the staff right now. I think that there's a real stress being put on the library to open to patrons for some capacity in the fall. And I know how I feel, that maybe we can do our jobs better and get materials to our patrons better with less access for patrons to the building. But I think that I probably don't have much of a choice there, although I've been pretty clear about my feelings. Yeah, I know we have on our lower level, we have a restaurant. We have a Caribou Coffee / Einstein Bagels, and it's going to open, and that restaurant doesn't belong to the library, right? It's independent. So if they make the decision that they're going to be open in the fall, then that really impacts what we are expected to do then too. It's a real negotiation.
Yeah. So the Center for Research Libraries is kind of a standalone library, but we do have a board of, so the board needs to approve any big changes, like moving to another level, but the question is brought to the executive leadership team of CRL, who's made up of the top managers, and they kind of make the decision, and then the board is informed, and if they have any objections, then of course we wouldn't, but so far it's worked out fine.
As we speak, I believe that there's meetings going on today. It is the university administration, like Sarah's, that makes the final decisions. Our dean does have a voice in it, and we have been asked, I was asked to make a plan, presented it to my chair, who gave it to the dean. And also, like Sarah, our building also has other departments that we don't have any control over. The university really likes my building, and I walked in one day thinking I'm the only person here, and because of that, I actually have to call my security, which is the Illinois State Police, to let them know I'm going in the building, so they don't think, you know, who's that person walking around in there? I'll come running over. So I always let them know when I'm going in, and I walk in one day and there's these people in the building. I'm like, okay, what's going on? Well, they decided that it was the safest and best place to do freshman placement testing. So that is what we're doing on site. Yeah. 3 full days a week with like half of but we're only using the first floor, which is where, you know, Access Services is at, but I'm on one half of the floor, they're the other half of this floor. And it's kind of like, you know, you stay over there, I'll stay over here, you know, and make sure you're at the door and you check people when they come in the door and do what we have to do. Here's the Purell kind of thing. And it is a matter of cooperation and hoping everybody's on the same page. We have communicated back and forth with that department, and they've been great with working with us and me working with them, helping them out sometimes. But yeah, it's always there's a conversation going, and trying to remain, so I made a point of remaining transparent with your staff and trying that the information that doesn't always happen. It doesn't come down to us. There's decisions, I see there's decisions that were being made. And you know, a lot of people think that, oh, the library should be open at the university. And it's like, well, yeah, but you have to take into account safety of the staff and the safety of the people coming into that library. And, you know, to you guys that are fully open, that's a huge challenge. It is a huge challenge. And again, all we can do is emphasize and stand up and you know, make ourselves heard that you're not going to have a library if your staff can't work. If we get sick, nobody's going to be able to do it. So, you know, work with us, keep it going. And that's all we can do.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody for putting stuff in the chat. I have another question that I'd like to ask, and this is for everybody, chat panelists. What kind of work are you seeing being done from home, or are you trying to ask your staff to do from home? I know that in Access Services, that can be a little bit tricky. So what are your thoughts about offering some work from home options for your staff?
So at CRL, we have a huge local records holding project with a lot of our staff, where they are actually, you know, local holdings are descriptions for serials of what issues and volumes are held. And we're going through and doing a lot of that work now with the part-time staff who would normally be involved in stacks, maintenance, and other areas. It's a simple project, but it's really useful to keep our catalog up to date. And it's something that's been needed for many years. So we're actually really happy to have this time to do the work.
I'm gonna mention our friend Alma, because Carly switched software platforms June 25th, right? That we switched over from Voyager to Alma. And that for my staff, that was kind of a blessing working from home, because it was, okay, now you have your chance. You have to, because a lot of the training sessions were canceled, you know, my ability to work with them was canceled. So a lot of it that we did from home was preparing for that transition and getting them trained using the tutorials that were provided to get them up to speed. Now we have the issue of, okay, we have this, when they come back, we have a whole new software system that they're going to need to be familiar with too. Processes that we're all still fine tuning. You know, how do we pick, we have our pick list. Well, how does that work now? How does the printing was different? It's completely different. So that puts a little extra pressure on, you know, when you're reopening, that you have a whole new system that you have to get used to, kind of thing. And a lot of the work had been in the last few months really working on that, cleaning up the catalog, cleaning up the patron records things, so that helped them. Someone asked me, how how do you check a book out from home? How do you do that? If that's your job, how do you do that? And I said, you know what? We'll find a way. There are ways to do that. And especially now, I mean, that's the plus side with this particular software. I can do that. But I still have to have somebody there to get the book and get it ready for the patron to pick up, whether it's curbside or if they come in to pick it up. You still do need, you know, boots on the ground, as we say. I want to quickly answer Jennifer type of question in there about trying to deal with scheduling. Kind of lost it here, about when you first open, about high demand in public libraries. I heard of one library that reopened, and they were just deluged their first day or two because their town was so excited that their library was open. But what they did was they stuck to their plan. They only allowed X amount of people in the library at the time. I understand that one of the parking lots got a little busy, so there may have been, you know, somebody had to go out and straighten that out. But I've been actually going and visiting different libraries all over the Chicago area to see ones that are open, some that aren't, that you just knock on the door and a person comes and talks to you through the door. That was kind of fun. And, you know, we got what we had to do, but a lot of it is you make your plan, you stay with it, you keep yourself safe. And people need to understand too that you have your limits, and your signage is really, really important, that it's clearly stated on your website. Make sure your policies and procedures are on your website, that it's there. Make sure your website is available for people. Put signage outside the library, you know, in the parking lot, not just on your doors, but also in your parking lot. That, you know, when you approach the door, we need you to do this. When you come in, we want you to do that. This is how we're going to do this. If you need a book, you can do this. So, you know, people are so excited about coming to your library. They're going to be a little more understanding. I mean, right now it seems like everybody has a really short temper, but if, you know, everybody take a breath, and it's presented there, and it's like, you can come in, just give it a moment. Everybody gets their turn. They're usually pretty good about it. And what they tell me is they'll have like a little bit of a rush, like in the morning, like usual, but then it does die down. And even after the first few days when you first open, it will level off. And what I really liked, particularly one library offered that they had curbside delivery. They opened their doors. They have continued. Most of the libraries have continued that curbside delivery because there is that whole faction of people that they're just not comfortable walking in those buildings yet. And still offering that service, you know, it helps that transition a little bit more. And it also helps your staff that they're not overwhelmed in the building if they're not comfortable having people around. So that's, you know, a little bit of the padding that we have to kind of back it up.
Thank you, Kitty. Sarah, did you have something to add to the work from home piece? Any work that you're offering your staff?
Yeah. So it's been a mixed bag. I think that we've had our systems department in the library has been really helpful in terms of help and making sure that we have things like access to Iliad from home, so that we're able to process those requests. And you know, if there are requests, there's a lot more now than there were before. But you know, I think that a lot of it was just emailing patrons and asking, what was it that you need? Would you accept this, or can we do this for you? And then that part is manual labor. So if the reserve staff didn't have an adequate scanner at home, then they're not going to be able to scan that item unless they're able to come into the library. It is what it is. I think that they've done a pretty good job of trying to get us the support that we need, but we can't get everything. So, for example, reserves probably could use a scanner at home, and we're working with what we have.
Sure, thank you. There's another question in the chat from Marilyn Wells. So Marilyn, if you don't mind to go ahead and unmute, you can ask your question.
Yes, I worked remotely from home during the summer, and I was under the impression that well, actually, I was in a Zoom meeting, and I was under the impression that people with underlying health issues going with the governor's proclamation was that, you know, we would continue to work remotely or to self-isolate at home. And since I could provide all the services that were needed remotely, I was continuing to work from home and did not know that the dean had dictated that we come back into the office. And at that point, my doctor had to intercede to say that it would not be a safe environment for me because my office has no ventilation. And there were a limited number of staff members that were already working there. So I was allowed to continue to work from home. I guess my question is one, what do you think about the option of for those people with underlying health issues, or what are other libraries doing that have librarians with underlying health issues that want to continue to work from home, going with the CDC mandates and the governor's mandates, or how should we approach that with administration? And the other question, if I'm going to slip this one in, but someone had already asked it, will you be providing virtual reference service, or will you be providing in-person reference service? So if someone could comment on those two questions, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Marilyn. So again, the two questions were, what are your processes or plans for staff that will need to work from home for underlying health conditions, and also what kind of reference services are you intending to offer?
So I've been pretty lucky that our library has been very supportive of what people are comfortable doing right now. No one has put any pressure on me to put pressure on staff to come in if they're not comfortable doing so. And I have several staff members that I know have underlying health conditions, even if I'm not necessarily sure what they are in some cases. I know that they're there. And so when I have a staff person say, you know, you had me on the schedule this week for 4 times, I'm not comfortable, I could come in twice, then I'm just accommodating that, because if the work is getting done, then I don't particularly care if it's being done at home or in the building. Again, it comes back to that concern I was talking about at the very beginning, where some staff seems like they want to come in all the time, but you can't assume that's what everybody wants. So I'm just making sure that I'm really listening. And if I thought that somebody had a health concern and it wasn't being taken that seriously, then of course I would just try to advocate for that staff person. As for reference, yeah, we've switched totally to a virtual model right now. And we're trying to figure out what those hours are going to look like for the fall, because you know, there aren't as many reference questions as there used to be. So it's just making sure that we have somebody who's going to man our person all those hours. I'm taking a shift a week, even though it's not really in my job description. It's working out really well, actually.
Are you using chat, or are you using email for your virtual reference service?
Both. Mostly chat. I don't think people do email questions. It's just not as common as a chat question. I really miss the phone component too, but because sometimes I just really want to hear the person's voice and then like be able to talk to them about the question. But again, we work with what we have.
And one final thing, Sarah. What about usage, reference usage? Over the summer for session 1 in June, we had a total of 5 reference questions, and for July, we had none. What about usage?
So yeah, we had some people who work in the reference department proper that just did some usage statistics and sent those out to us. And I would say for this year in general, we had fewer than we've had the year before, which was fewer than we had the year before, which was fewer than we had the year before. So we have questions. They are not in a copious amount or an unmanageable amount. I had a shift yesterday for reference, and I actually had, I think, 3 questions, which I thought was great in a 2-hour space.
Yeah, it was.
That's a very anecdotal answer.
Yeah,
but,
no, that was fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Sarah said, that it's really about, you know, making sure that people are getting taken care of that are sick and have potential to become sick more easily than others. And you know, we definitely wouldn't want somebody working if they were in a perilous situation. And you know, sometimes it's true that people won't tell you what's going on with them, and you just have to believe them and trust that there is an issue that keeps them from working. And as far as reference, you know, we've always done remote reference pretty much, so we use email and the phone most of the time.
I'm just going to add in that you do need to, you know, worst case scenario, you have a staff member who cannot come in and work, that definitely you have to keep HR in the loop and follow what your administration says. Like Marilyn, you said, you know, you got told one thing and you need to, they had to step in and make some arrangements for you. And that's really it. You have to have the communication going with it. And like Sarah said, you have to be sensitive to your staff, and Marie said, we have to trust that we're being told some things. And in my case, I just look at the work they can do off-site, and that may be the person that, as we're moving forward, that may be the person that's going to end up staying and doing that work that you can do from home. We might have to readjust the work that they do. We have, you know, another little part to that. It makes it a little more complicated because we are civil service employees, or my staff are civil service employees. They have contracts, so we have to be careful of that. You know, if you're reassigning some work, that you're not taking someone else's job, or you're changing their job levels, it's very tricky. But overall, you, as we said, you work together. And I think at this point, as you said, you had a doctor's note, and you can, it's documented, and we are able to flex and do this with real quick with reference. Our reference department right now, the only thing they're not doing is face-to-face. They have always done, students have been able to contact them virtually, either by chat, by email, by, now they can text, or by phone. The phones are actually forwarded, and they have posted hours online. So if anything, they're really carrying the bulk of the work right now, because they're the ones that are doing everything remotely. And even, I know a lot of the schools too, going back in the fall, reference librarians are getting ready to do their online doing instruction for the freshmen or whatever, and preparing, and some of that's going to be done online also. So good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you all so much. We're kind of maybe a little too short of time to add in another question. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. To the panelists, thank you so much for offering to share your experiences and sharing your expertise and your what you all are planning to do in the upcoming fall. For everybody that's here, thank you so much for putting things in the chat and asking questions. Sorry for those of you that asked and we weren't able to get to those. Hope this was helpful, and I hope this provides a little bit of guidance going forward for you into the fall semester with your physical spaces. So again, thank you to the panelists. Dan, kind of transition into the next phase.
I don't.
Okay, I think we are going to take just a 5-minute break to kind of get set up and get ready for the next set of panelists. So hang tight, and we'll see you around 11:05.